Hi, I'm the Guitar Trooper, YouTube's favorite old guy. Well, not everybody likes everything. Ever listen to a song that simply rubs you the wrong way, only to discover that it had become a hit, occupying innumerable precious minutes of radio airtime while you did your best to forget it? To follow is a list of 10 hits of the 1960s, all of them top 10 hits, and some even number ones that I never want to hear again. By the way, this is by no means meant to disparage those artists involved with the songs that they made money off of them, and after all, that's their job. For one reason or another, though, the following 1960s songs just weren't my cup of tea. Number 10, Down in the Boondocks, Billy Joe Royal, released May 24, 1965. Joe South, who was Royal's guitarist and close friend, wrote this song. He wrote other songs too, and became notable later for writing Games People Play and Rose Garden in the 70s. This was a top 10 hit almost everywhere it was released. On the Billboard Hot 100, number 9. On the Canadian RPM, number 1. On the singles chart for Australia, number 10. But surprisingly, on the UK retailer chart, it could get no higher than number 38. Go figure. Nevertheless, it was Billy Joe Royal's biggest hit, yet it was his first single as well. To say that the recording master was made within a primitive environment is a gross understatement. The saving grace was that they were using a 3-track Ampex machine, which at the time was still a very commonly used recorder in the industry and had a solid reputation. But that's where the modest sophistication stopped. Down in the Boondocks was recorded at Master Sound Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, a converted schoolhouse which also housed Bill Lowry's offices. The school's auditorium served as a recording studio. Echo on the final master recording was done by playing it through a speaker inside a septic tank. There's a joke in there somewhere, but I don't know where. Billy Joe Royal moved on to be a modest country music star. He died in his sleep on October 6, 2015 at the age of 73. He was a good guy, but I couldn't hang with that song. Number 9, Eve of Destruction, Barry McGuire. Released July 26, 1965. It was a protest song that got traction due primarily to its topical lyrics rather than its musical construct. The songwriter, P.F. Sloan, was a session guitarist friend of former New Christy Minstrels member gone solo, Barry McGuire. But the song was not McGuire's originally. It was offered to the Byrds, but they rejected it, and incredibly, the Turtles recorded it first, but it remained only as a track on their debut album, leaving the McGuire single to assault the pop charts. The recording was hurriedly made at the end of a very long day in the studio, and Barry's voice was shot. Because it was intended to be a rough vocal to be refined later, Barry read the lyrics with an uninspired, rushed effort, but producer Jay Lasker loved the raspy character of the rough take and decided to press it. A direct promotional push to a local station got the record on the air, and it took off. By the way, the Turtles did finally release their recording in 1970 as their last single, and it charted, but just barely. The Turtles version peaked at number 100 on the Billboard Hot 100. Number 8, Bread and Butter, the Newbies. Released July 1964 in the U.S. and 28th of August 1964 in the U.K. The New Beats were 3 guys from the southern U.S., Larry Henley, who was the singer and the songwriter, and 2 brothers, Dean and Mark Mathis, who did the instrumentals and backing vocals. You probably don't recognize the name Larry Henley, but you probably do know a famous song that he wrote. It was The Wind Beneath My Wings, made famous by Bette Midler. Well, anyway, the New Beats were trying to get a record contract in 1964, and Bread and Butter, written by Larry Parks and Jay Turnbow, was their demo, and it worked. They secured a contract with Hickory Records and then formally re-recorded it, and it was their first record and bestseller, making it to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks. And it wasn't hot just in the U.S. either. It reached number 15 on the UK singles chart and number 8 on the Australia chart. And here is the part of this song that drives me nuts. The New Beats went on to have other top 40 hits, all of them featuring Larry Henley's falsetto vocals. Number 7, Wah Diddy Diddy, Manfred Mann. Released in July 1964. In the music industry, a hook is a distinctive musical sound or a phrase in the lyrics designed to characterize the song and assure that the audience will remember it. The unfortunate part about this is that a lyrical hook is not necessarily an assemblage of real words. It can be just gibberish. There are plenty of examples of hooks, but the subject at hand is a song recorded by Manfred Mann, a band that was at one time a serious British blues band. The song, called Wah Diddy, was written in New York by the successful pop songwriting duo Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich, who had already written one song based upon a nonsense hook in the lyrics that had proven to be a hit. In 1964, Manfred Mann, at the time having a popular single in the UK called 54321, needed a springboard song to break into the U.S. market. So, even though Wah Diddy had already been recorded in the U.S. by the girl group The Exciters and gotten to only number 78, Manfred Mann picked it up and changed the title slightly to Wah Diddy Diddy and got their wish. They broke into the U.S. market, and the record went to number 1 on the Hot 100. Manfred Mann continued to make their place in the market with less frivolous offerings, notably having chart success in later years, covering Bob Dylan's The Mighty Quinn and Bruce Springsteen's Blinded by the Light. Number 6, Ahab the Arab, Ray Stevens. Released May 1962. I will cede up front that this is a novelty song by intent. It still makes my teeth itch. It wasn't just top 40. It went to number 5 on the Hot 100 and number 9 on the R&B chart. What were these people thinking? Ray Stevens was born Harold Ray Ragsdale. The name change came about in 1957 at the insistence of Capitol Records when he was signed at 18 years of age as a country artist. He recorded several singles under Capitol's Prep label, but none charted, and his contract was dropped. So he began a college degree plan in music, but dropped out after 3 years into the program because he just didn't think he needed it. The reason for that decision was a discovery of his ability to compose novelty songs, which he began doing under a contract with Mercury Records in 1961. Ahab the Arab, based upon concepts that he lifted from the book Arabian Nights, was his second single, the first having the unwieldy name of Jeremiah Peabody's polyunsaturated, quick-dissolving, fast-acting, pleasant-tasting, green and purple pill. Goofy as the songs were, Ray was a serious music industry professional and moved to Nashville at the urging of label executive Shelby Singleton of Mercury Records, just before Ray recorded Ahab the Arab. Once in the Nashville music scene, Ray expanded his talents into being a serious songwriter, a multi-instrumental session musician, a singer, and an arranger. In 1970, he wrote Everything is Beautiful, which earned him a 1971 Grammy Award for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance. Besides all of that stuff, he won the Music City News Award for the Comedian of the Year in 9 consecutive years. But still, Ahab the Arab makes my teeth itch. Number 5, I'm Henry the VIII, I Am, Herman's Hermits. Released June 1965 in the U.S., September 1965 in the UK. And I can't get it out of my head once it's planted there. But I have tried. This ditty was not written by or for Herman's Hermits. It was written in 1910 by Fred Murray and R.P. Weston and recorded that year by Harry Champion. It had become a music hall classic in Britain before anybody in Herman's Hermits was even born. The Herman's Hermits version is only 1 minute 49 seconds long, making it one of the shortest U.S. #1 hit songs ever. It was a powerhouse hit, even displacing the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction at that top spot in the U.S. Catchy because of its rock and roll stylization and a Chuck Berry-ish guitar break, the audience found it impossible to resist. I, on the other hand, could. Ow. Still playing in my head. Number 4, The Rain, the Park, and Other Things, The Cowsills. Released September 1967. A personal note here, the incessant harp flourishings in this song got old as soon as the intro was finished. The Ray in the Park and Other Things features music and lyrics co-written in about 2 hours by Artie Kornfeld and Steve Dubhoff, specifically for the Cowsills. Some of you with a sharp ear may recognize the name Art Kornfeld, and if you are one of those people, you probably know why you remember him. He was one of the executive producers of the Woodstock Festival in 1969. As were all of the Cowsills' early recordings, studio musicians played all of the instruments, and the family members overdubbed the vocals later. It was recorded in 1966 with Bill Cowsill singing the lead, but when MGM released it as a single in September '67, it had extra vocal overdubs by Barbara Cowsill, the kid's mom. The opening of the song, which was intended to be the sound of a rainstorm, ended up being a recording of sizzling bacon because they couldn't get a recording of a rainstorm to come across convincingly on the record. It took off, making it to number 2 on the Hot 100, unable to dethrone the Monkees' Daydream Believer, though, and it went all the way to number 1 on the Canadian RPM chart. It was their biggest hit until 1969 when they covered the song Hair from the Broadway play, and it also went to number 2 in the U.S. The Cowsills were successful through the early 70s, and they were an inspiration for the manufactured group known as the Partridge Family. Number 3, Honey, Bobby Goldsboro. Released February 17, 1968. Bobby Goldsboro wasn't the first to record or release this song. Bobby Russell wrote the song based upon a tree in his yard that he had planted years before, and he produced a single for former Kingston Trio member Bob Shane, who was the first to release the song. Goldsboro's recording in 1968 was a big hit, though, making number 1 on 8 international charts. Larry Henley of the New Beats recommended the song to Goldsboro before Shane's recording was released, but when he listened to it, he found it to be overproduced and didn't really like it, even though he was in need of new songs to record. But the song had a second chance with him. Bobby and his producer Bob Montgomery invited Russell over to play a few of his songs, one of which being Honey. Bobby found that when he heard the song performed with only a guitar, he did like it after all, and asked if he could cover the song. Well, knowing that Shane's version was to be released soon, Russell consented, but with the proviso that Goldsboro's version did not compete with it. With that, they agreed to have Goldsboro's version released no sooner than 4 weeks after Shane's. The chart success was astonishingly dissimilar to Shane's totally flat number 104 on the Billboard Bubbling Under chart. By April of 1968, Bobby Goldsboro's recording of Honey went number 1 in April and stayed there for 5 weeks. It also made number 1 on the country chart for 3 weeks. It was a million seller within those 3 weeks, in the top 10 on 14 international charts, and number 1 on 8 of those. It was as hot as hits come. I just couldn't hang with it. Too sappy. Number 2, Yummy, 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 Ohio Express. Release April 1968. The Ohio Express is an odd tale of marketing and artificial presentation. To be concise, the name wasn't a band at all, but rather a marketing brand used by Jerry Cassinet's and Jeffrey Katz's Super K Productions to release the music of a number of different musicians and acts. Incidentally, one artist under that umbrella that you will likely recognize is frontman Joe Walsh with his early band, The Measles, who recorded some tracks under the Ohio Express banner. Yummy, Yummy, Yummy was co-written by Joey Levine. The track, sung by Levine, was a 100% studio musician project and had immediate chart success, reaching number 4 on the U.S. Pop Singles Chart and number 5 on the U.K. Singles Chart. In a pinch to have a real group to tour as Ohio Express, Super K Productions hired an obscure 5-piece Ohio band, then known as Sir Timothy and the Royals, to pose as Ohio Express for the public and for media appearances. These 5 guys are the ones who are depicted on the record covers and also those who performed on the road, but were rarely involved with any subsequent studio work for Ohio Express recordings, nor conversely did Levine ever appear with them on the road. Successful recording? Yeah. One that I would play incessantly? No. Please. And now, number 1. Snoopy versus the Red Baron, the Royal Guardsman. Released November 1966. In 1962, Johnny Horton had a couple of history-oriented hits. The Battle of New Orleans in 1959. And Sink the Bismarck in 1960. Songwriter Dick Holler, frontman for his group Dick Holler and the Holidays, wanted to pattern a new song after these hits. His idea was based upon the World War I German air ace, popularly known as the Red Baron. The tune was upbeat and not unlike that of the Horton hits. The band took it to their favorite studio in New Orleans, Cosimo Studios, a place run by engineer Cosimo Matassa, and cut a demo. In Holler's words, quote, "We went down to Cosimo's in New Orleans and recorded it and spent all day putting in airplane sounds and machine gun bullets and took it around to every major label. Nobody wanted to put it out, so it sat on the shelf for 3 years." Unquote. It's October 1965. Sebastopol, California, home studio of cartoonist Charles M. Schulz. Fascinated with aviation and its use during World War I, Schulz launches a repeating series of strips featuring the Peanuts dog character Snoopy as a childlike pretender as he sits on top of his doghouse and fantasizes about being a World War I ace flying a Sopwith Camel in battles against the infamous German ace Manfred von Richthofen, popularly known as the Red Baron. The quirky idea clicks with his syndicated audience, and merchandising opportunities soar. It's late 1966, Sarasota, Florida, home of the semi-retired record producer Phil Gernhardt. Phil, who had worked with Holler's group in the early 60s, remembers Holler's languishing Red Baron demo, and taking notice of the Snoopy phenomenon, sees an opportunity. He writes 2 new verses to the song, adding the character of Snoopy, and gives it to the virtually unknown Florida band, the Royal Guardsmen, to record. He also agrees to manage the group. Recorded at Charles Fuller Production Studio in Tampa, Florida, and released on Laurie Records in November of 1966, Snoopy vs. the Red Baron peaks at number 2 on the Hot 100 during the week of December 31st, 66, with I'm a Believer keeping it out of the number 1 position. And did I mention that in the frenzy of rushing the song into production that Gernhardt forgot to get permission from Charles Schulz and his publisher United Feature Syndicate to use the reference to Snoopy? Well, he didn't get permission. And the Royal Guardsmen were sued by United Feature Syndicate for use of the Snoopy name without permission or advertising license. Because of this rather major oops, the Canadian subsidiary of Laurie Records refused to publish the song until such permission was granted, and meanwhile, the Guardsmen hedged their bet by recording an alternate version named Squeaky vs. the Black Knight, which was not officially distributed but somehow managed to get airplay on one Canadian radio station and ended up being a local hit. Well, Schulz and United Feature Syndicate did finally agree to license the use of Snoopy with the condition that all publishing royalties went to UFS, and Snoopy vs. the Red Baron was distributed in Canada, the UK, New Zealand, and Australia with top 10 status everywhere and number 1 status on the Australian and Canadian charts. There were sequel Snoopy recordings made, which were fairly successful, and which is probably at least some of my reason for burnout on this goofy recording. Outside of the Snoopy franchise, though, the Royal Guardsmen had no other hit records. Do you have other 1960s songs that you never want to hear again? Feel free to comment and spread the misery. By the way, this isn't all of the 1960s songs that grind my gears, nor is it my top 10 list of them. During the script development, I kept recalling song after song that fit this list, but I didn't want to try to do a piece on every one of them because, after all, you guys have a life too. Hey guys, thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do me a favor and click on that thumbs up icon and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. You can also use comments to suggest video subject matter regarding pop music and pop music culture from the 1950s to the 1970s. A great thing you can also do to support the channel and the Facebook page is just sharing the video with your friends. Just click on the arrow icon and pick the destination person. Help us expand the audience. Speaking of supporting the channel, this would be a great time to subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber, or if you're watching this on Facebook and not yet a follower of the Facebook page, start following it. It's easy and it's free, and it lets YouTube and Facebook know that you support the channel. Just click on the follow button on Facebook or subscribe button on the YouTube channel main page, or click on the big purple icon that appears on the YouTube screen somewhere over here toward the end of this video, and be sure to select the top notification bell on the drop-down menu so that you will be notified whenever I post new content for the public. If you would like the opportunity to see content on YouTube a few days earlier when it is viewable only to channel members, you can upgrade your YouTube subscription to become a channel member. Just click on the join icon and follow the instructions. It's not a free thing to upgrade, but it's as dirt cheap as YouTube would let me make it. Thanks again for watching.